Today, I will become a self-help channel. Creativity is just one of those things that are massively misunderstood, even by creative people. The immediate incorrect assumption that most people have is just, oh, creativity is just that nonsensical way of thinking that artists have to generate bullshit ideas out of nothing that serve no purpose. And in the ranking of statements that are incorrect, this one's pretty far up the incorrect ladder. Incorrect, by the way, is a word that you should remember because it will become very important later. Creativity is one of the most important mental skills to have, if not the most important mental skill to have. It's not just artists and creative types that use it in their purest form, but creativity is required to succeed in any high-achieving field. Engineers need it to come up with machines. Detectives need it to make the right connections. Scientists need it to devise experiments. Business people need it to find new strategies. Programmers need it to discover novel ways of making code work. Creativity is essential if you want to engage in any form of problem solving, because at its core, creativity is free association. Other people describe it as divergent thinking or lateral thinking. It's what people mean when they use the buzz phrase thinking out of the box. Picture a window. Any kind of window. Chances are most of you pictured something like this, which is definitely a window. It's just not the only kind of window. Very few of you probably pictured the front pane of a microwave, or a mirror, or a computer screen, or an eye, or a packet of hallucinogenic mushrooms, or a tear into an alternate universe. All of those things are a type of window, be that through material or conceptual association. However, a lot of you just there, at the thought of someone thinking of a window that isn't the standard type of window, went, no! Hold on, that's incorrect! And yeah, it might be incorrect, but it's not wrong. Children are amazing at free association. They constantly engage in problem solving in order to understand the world around them better, and they are not burdened too heavily by preconceived notions. But those preconceived notions are not the thing that stops us from engaging in creative thinking as adults. They might actually help us because it means we are familiar with a lot more concepts and a lot more connections between disparate ideas. All the time I hear people complaining that when they were kids, they were creative as a motherfucker. They could just take things out of thin air and come up with ideas out of nothing. I mean, you had a rock, and that rock had a family history, a name, an occupation, a fatal flaw, a whole biography around it, and it was a rock. But nowadays, as adults, they just lack the ability to come up with shit. And they see other adults who still have this ability and assume that those people are just sort of freaks of nature. And sure, there are people who are born more creative than others, and there are people who have a better ability to retain their creativity into adulthood and expand upon it. But the process of becoming an adult isn't the thing that takes away our ability to be creative. No. That honor belongs to school. Think about what school isn't. School isn't, here is your problem, and you must come up with a solution for this problem, and I, the teacher, will give you the mental tools to come up with this solution. What school is instead is, here is a description of your problem, and here are the words you need to memorize when they come with the slip of paper, so you can write down these exact words when they describe this exact problem, and that's what you need to do. If you come up with anything else that isn't the exact thing that you were told to memorize, even if it is pretty much correct, often you will not be given any points for it. Even if your teacher might want to give you the points and might want to have you creatively engaged with things, they can't because of the way that standardized testing is now prevalent everywhere. Any one question has one exact answer, and if your answer is not precisely that exact answer, it is incorrect and therefore wrong. But see, that's the big problem. Something being incorrect doesn't necessarily mean that it's also wrong. Making mistakes is a very essential part of the creative process. And making mistakes, in case you haven't heard, is incredibly good for you. You don't want to teach people just information. There is so much information out there that you can't memorize it all. And even if you do memorize it all, chances are you do not understand what the thing you have memorized means. Yes, mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. But what does that mean? Someone who memorized this information in high school might now be able to go a layer deeper in the textbook and put the right words in the right order so they form the precise sentences from that textbook. They have no idea how the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, but they know how to describe it. It's like singing in a different language. You know the words, but you have no idea what they mean. Someone who has had a creative and more mistakes-based approach to learning about the mitochondria will take what they know about it, their understanding of the process and the little things that are mitochondria, and describe them to you the way that they understand them. The very simplest description for that being, the mitochondria are the powerhouses of the cell. But to get to this point, they had to expend a lot of time and energy to try and solve this problem creatively, and being wrong most of the time, taking in new information as they understand it, and familiarizing themselves with pretty alien concepts just in order to be able to understand this fairly simple thing. This method of learning things takes way longer than just memorizing shit, but it comes with the benefit that not only do you get to explain how things happen from the point of understanding them, but you can also abstract the information and knowledge you have gained from the understanding of this specific issue and put it onto another issue and gain results and glean information there. And this kind of abstraction and reapplication of ideas to novel concepts requires a lot of creativity. This is how it can appear as though information creates new ideas out of thin air, but really those ideas are concepts reapplied in novel ways, broken down, recombined, shuffled around in wild ways that you just haven't thought of before. And the magical impression can happen even to creative people, because a lot of the creative process eventually happens in your subconscious mind. That is why you get so many good ideas in the shower, because your mind is no longer preoccupied with computing new information that comes in and can sort through old information that it already has. And one can indeed learn this power. But to achieve that, you have to disabuse yourself of the notion that an incorrect answer is a wrong answer. If you want the correct solution for a problem, you need to understand the incorrect ones and why they are incorrect. Only that way you can figure out why something is, in fact, correct. There's a lot of experimentation that needs to go on in the creative process. A lot of connecting wildly disparate concepts that have nothing to do with each other or even with the initial thing that you were thinking about. But you might just gain insight from those concepts. Every mistake you make is an opportunity to learn. And even if you come up with a solution for the problem that isn't the correct solution, it might be the correct solution to a problem that is slightly different from the one that you are dealing with right now. Much like the cave rescue robot that Elon Musk had built wasn't the correct solution for the specific problem it would have been applied to, but the Thai government still wants the robot because it may well be the solution to a lot of other problems that might arise in the future. But now we're bleeding over into craftsmanship, the process of finding out what is and what isn't the right approach for a problem, essentially finding the right raw diamond and cutting it into a proper gem. It is the ability to take creativity and shape it into useful solutions. In this metaphor, creativity is the diamond mine, and I don't care how good a gem cutter you are, you're not going to be able to make a fine diamond without any raw diamonds. I'm not going to teach you how to be a craftsman today. There are so many different ways to be a craftsman, and they all require so different tools and modes of thinking that even going through a fraction of them all would extend this video to several hours. Not to mention that I don't know how to be a craftsman in most fields. In the arts, a painter, a comedian, a writer, and a musician, they all work with creativity, but their specific craftsmanship skills are very different from each other. This is why sometimes, when you hear a song that you like, you feel inspired to write fiction or engage in whatever creative pursuit that you engage in, because though you do not engage in the precise same process as the other person, you do work off the same base. Here's the thing. Despite what you may have been told your entire life, creativity is not just a thing that goes away when you grow up. It is a skill that the school system actively encourages you to unlearn. And that is why some people have it and you don't. And like any other skill, you can learn creativity. And you can combine it with your craftsmanship skills, you can develop your craftsmanship skills, and you can just generally increase your intelligence by becoming more creative. And so now this is the part where I teach you how to be creative. A lot of people just sort of sit down and decide, now I shall be creative. And then they get mad because nothing happens. Ideas are not generated that way. They don't just spring out of nothing. That might work for a seasoned artist, but they have all of these processes internalized. Ideas need to be sparked by something. Even when it just pops into your head, your unconscious has been working on that for a while. Which again, this is why so many people get so many ideas in the shower or on the toilet. I have linked an amazing video in the description that you should totally check out when we are done with today's creative exercises, which are forthcoming and will be a lot of fun for you, I promise. And the video deals with a lot of ideas on how we could reform the school system and why we should reform the school system into encouraging creative thinking a lot more than we do today. As many of you know, I am a writer. Check out my second channel full of audiobooks and PDFs of short stories that I have written, link in the description. And I have devised for myself a sort of prompt word generator. There is nothing better at grouping together completely disparate concepts than the roll of the dice. It forces me to think outside of the box and find connections between things that usually do not have any. I also like to keep things simple so it doesn't generate too much information for me. So it's basically just a big list of words and the computer picks 4 of those words. Out of those 4 random words, an idea is generated and built up through the creative process. And you will be doing this creative exercise with me. But before we start this, I would really like to reiterate, there are no wrong answers. Any words that come to your mind, any concepts that you find floating around in your consciousness, they are all the right path. They are all the good connection. There are no wrong answers today. We will start by creating a character based on a pre-generated prompt, or rather we will create 4 different characters with an increasing amount of things which are allowed within the rules. And I will try to describe my creative process during this. Our words are act, chime, milk, portrait. We will start by creating a character that may well exist in our world, right? Act, chime, and portrait all have a sort of artistic connotation, right? Acting on stage. The chime is music, musical art. Portrait, obviously painting. So I think this character is going to be an artist. And we're gonna take a lot of stuff out of these 3 words later. But right now, I think I'm gonna focus on that. Then you have milk. Milk could be mother's milk. Maybe this artist is extremely attached to his mother in some way. Maybe he lives with his mother, but his mother does not approve of his almost stereotypical artistic bon vivant lifestyle because she wanted him to learn something proper. And the only reason he does still live with his mother is not because he doesn't have the money to move out, but because he just really wants to live with his mother, possibly because of some creepy shit that might give us some interesting character conflict. This also once again plays into the keyword act. Maybe he pretends to other people like he is this independent person, but really he goes to his mother, and really that is a secret that he actually lives with his mother? Because, probably it would be embarrassing. And right now in the story, a portrait is being painted of this character, meaning a journalist is sort of writing an article about him, a documentary is made about him, something of the sort, and now the character is trying to conceal the fact that they are living with their mother for whatever creepy reasons. Next up, we can come up with a character that exists in a science fiction setting, so a lot more things are allowed. Basically anything that is possible in sci-fi is now possible for us. Chime does sound fairly similar to crime, so let's just make our character a criminal of some sort, and acting, a stripper's act. strippers, and this criminal is a person who essentially deals with sex slaves. They are a sex slave trafficker that specializes in sort of frontier illegal strip clubs. Maybe for the poor, for like poor miners in distant areas, or maybe for the rich. Maybe this is a very exclusive thing in some sort of high level area. Maybe this is a dystopian setting where the rich can do basically what they want, and the character procures these sex slaves for them. Milk could just be his complexion, could be a very, very pale person, even because it's science fiction, paler than usually like the palest white people you might run into. A portrait is hung in a frame, and maybe this character is trying to frame another character because of something that he needs to protect himself from, because he did something and he wants someone else to take the fall for it, and so he is framing another character, and that is the conflict of our story. Next up, we'll try to do a sort of traditional fantasy character. So going back to the whole artistic thing, this character would obviously be a bard, but not your standard lute-playing bard, even though chime is a word here. No, they will be a sort of an actor. A juggler maybe. I think a juggler would be very good. Would also probably have in an RPG some very cool abilities with, you could throw balls that explode in strange different ways. It does say chime though, and so it definitely has like one of those hats with bells on them. I don't know what the name is right now. Milk and honey, the land of milk and honey, the north. This character is from whatever the northern region of our fantasy setting is. We could make it Norse-inspired, we don't have to. Maybe the northern region is sort of Russian-inspired. Maybe it's something completely different. Going back to the portrait is a form of self-portrayal. Maybe this character is obsessed with his personal legend, which is why he might be a traveling adventurer. Maybe he just wants to experience all these things, or just come up with fictional stories of his insane exploits and tell those to people, so he will be memorized for the rest of time, like it would be if a portrait had been drawn of it. Now we will apply this same technique to a fourth and last character, which is a completely weird, off the balls, no rules at all type character. How about we make this an elemental, but it's a milk elemental, right? It's maybe like a genie, a milk genie. The bottle that the genie is in is like a milk pail, and you open it up and it comes out there, and it's made of milk. Portrait is a person's face, maybe faces. This genie has a tendency to take on a lot of different faces and a lot of different guises. Maybe they have the ability to conceal the fact that they are in fact a genie. Maybe they can just look normal if they choose to, or probably not. I think that will be a bit boring. But I think the ability to change shapes in, the face and also body type regions makes sense because they're made of liquid. Chime could be dancing to the tune of whoever summoned them, but that's a bit tropey. I don't like that. We'll come up with something different for that word. Maybe there's a certain sound. The way to defeat this genie is that you need to play a certain note, because that sort of breaks up the mass of the milk into individual droplets. And that's how you destroy this genie. But it's a very well guarded secret, because obviously the genie doesn't want anyone to know how to destroy it. In Act, this genie also has a secret, and it does indeed portray itself as very willing to help people and very willing to help those who summon it, but really it has some sort of ulterior motive. And that ulterior motive could be that it wants to become friends with whoever summons it, so it eventually can sort of trade its own way up the ladder and arrive at the king, and then it can persuade the king to drink it because it thinks that the king is a bit stupid, and if the king drinks the milk, the genie will take possession of his body and gain new physical abilities that are manifest. See, this is how we know that it can't just transform into any being without it being apparent that it's made out of milk. So it can basically take over the world by clever cunning. Now I want you to do the exact same thing. Come up with 4 characters with words that I will give you in a moment. Come up with a character that could exist in our world. Come up with a science fiction character, a fantasy character, and a completely just off-the-walls weird character. I would like you to post this in the description as you write it. Just pause the video, write it down. I'm gonna be here. There's absolutely no stress. You don't need to do this. If you don't feel comfortable putting your creative stuff in the comment section, that's completely fine. But you should write it down somewhere, or at least think about it. Take the time to actually think about it. You might find it fun. Here are your prompt words: crystal, flaunt, logic, and soft. Now that we've opened our minds creatively, we will come up with 3 entirely different creatures of the same set of words, and all of them will have no rules, and they will tell us sort of which genre they might be in, if they are in any genre at all. So our prompt words are glass, sheer, sound, yellow. I just came up with a completely different creature, but I had to cut all of that out because I accidentally took a prompt word from a different prompt because I'm too stupid to look on a fucking piece of paper that's got a bunch of words written on it. Sheer, sheer, sheer. Sheer is a creature that's got big fucking claws, right? This is a predatory creature. It's gonna cut you and it's gonna hurt you really bad. And as for the glass, we're going to say that it has translucent parts of its body. Right, because it's originally from a cave environment. It's very low in light. You know that there are a lot of beings that live in caves that don't have color. Yellow is not a color in this case. Yellow in this case is misconceptions because of yellow journalism, because people think that there is a way to defeat this creature that is very easy, but that isn't actually the way to defeat this creature, because this isn't a simple role-playing game type world. And what people think is sound is that if you utter a certain phrase, magically the people of this land who are not very educated and fall victim to such preconceptions, they think if you utter a certain phrase, then this creature will leave you alone, which is not true. Let's come up with a different creature. Let's maybe go a little cuter, and with sheer, let's come up with a type of sheep. A type of genetically modified sheep, because this is the future, and sheep are shorn with shears, and that's how you get wool. But glass, this is not ordinary wool. This is a sort of these are sheep that have been genetically modified to sort of grow strands of fiber optic cable. And the skin of these creatures, despite the wool being essentially fiber optics, is yellow for just some reason. That's just their color. And the sound, the bell, sheep have a bell. They are not tracked through bells, but because they need a very large area to eat, and they are essentially kept wild, and sort of drones take care of their predators, but they also have tracking devices implanted in them, so when it's time to shear, those tracking devices will actually activate and not just tell people where they are, but they will bring them back to the farm. They will take over their brains so they can go there. Let's come with a third creature. Let's make this one something magical, something a little more absurd than what we've had until now. Glass blowing is the changing of matter into different shapes. This spirit has the ability to sort of shape things in ways that don't really make sense. Sheer it has been cut off from its original home plane, which was some sort of alternate universe type area, and it now wails like a banshee. Not really like a banshee, more like a sad wailing, because it cannot return home. Yellow could be the yellow fever, which was actually a disease that really existed. Maybe this being isn't so much a corporeal entity as a collection of small corporeal entities that is like bacteria that interact with each other, and through the collective existence of these creatures, as it takes over, it doesn't take over a human body. It might, no. Let's go with more fungal type thing. It's spread out over a large area, and it is a non-corporeal thing that exists through the convergence of all of these different tiny entities that don't really do much on their own. Now that I've demonstrated this process to you, I very much encourage you to also do the same thing. Once again, if you want to, write it in the description. Take all the time you need. Just pause the video. I'm going to be here in a moment still, or in an hour. I don't give a shit how long you take. This is your thing. This is guilt-free. Don't have to write it in the comment section. You can write it somewhere else. You know the drill. Okay, here are your prompt words. Chuckle, cosmopolitan, deception, envy. This sort of technique can be applied to anything, anytime, anywhere. Eventually you're going to be able to create entire stories or paintings or anything off this. And the more you engage in the connection of disparate concepts within information that you receive, the more you will detect that information in the real world, and you will be able, using your skills as a craftsman, to take the insane ideas and put them together into something plausible that is interesting, usable, and makes sense. Now, if you do consider yourself entirely uncreative, this may have been a very difficult exercise for you, and you may not be very impressed with your results. That is not a problem at all. I mean, this is a skill. Eventually, this will be easier for you as with any skill, and your results will be better as with any skill. Plus, I think a lot of the problem with why creative people often hate their work is because it's no longer mystical where it came from, you know? You understand the process by which you yourself arrived at this thing, and you now know that it's really not all that special. Creativity is not magic. It is something that you can learn and do, and the better you get at it, the more fun it becomes. If none of these words actually sparked any creative inspiration for you, don't fret. It might just be that words aren't the thing that does it for you, right? For me, words are the #1 method. For other people, it's pictures or pictograms. There's this game called Rory Story Cubes that are like dice with little images on them, and for many people those are fantastic to spark their creativity. As with any skill, you need to find the right approach for you, and that means that you will have to go through a lot of approaches that are not the right approach for you. But eventually you will be able to make it because you have made those mistakes. Do not believe the thing that school tells you. Making mistakes is a good thing because it is the best way to learn. Thank you very much for watching this video. I certainly had a lot of fun doing it. Do all the things that you would do with the video. Maybe share it to your friends who have been complaining about, oh, I'm so uncreative. I will help them out. 100%. They can do it. Consider supporting my work on Patreon, and then when you are on Patreon, you get cool rewards, primarily on the super cool Discord server that I have that you should definitely join. Until then, in that spirit, until such time as in the Situation Food Review, I appreciate you all, and see you around, cunts.